Yemeni security sees Houthi-bound drone ports in Al-Mahra governorate. The United Nations says that Yemen's education system is at risk. Angry rallies in the Middle East protest against the burning of the Holy Quran in Sweden. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I'm Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. The security in Al-Mahra governorate seized a shipment of 100 drone parts smuggled by Iran to the Houthi militia. This incident affirms that the rebel militia is continuing to choose violence rather than peace. This report has more.
A shipment of 1 drone parts that were meant for the Houthi rebels were seized by the Yemeni security agencies. According to Yemeni sources, the security were able to seize the shipment while inspecting a truck at a crossing point. The truck's owner stated that his shipment was full of clothes, but after a check, the illegal products were discovered and seized. The deputy head of the Consultations and Reconciliation Commission verified that the consignment contained 100 drone parts headed for the Houthi rebels. These drones could have killed so many people. According to a UN report, traffickers are using a land route stretching from the eastern border to reach the Houthis. They also mention naval routes used by Iranian smuggling networks. The Iranian regime uses many ways to supply the Houthis with weapons, like ships and commercial airlines. Also, Iran appears to have increased its efforts to illegally supply weapons to terrorist organizations and its proxies, particularly the Houthis. Furthermore, it commits crimes against humanity. And according to Human Rights Watch, it has killed or injured over 17,500 civilians since 2015, and it also recruits, injures, and kills children. In the last 2 months alone, the U.S. Navy has detained a number of vessels suspected of smuggling weapons to the Houthis from Iran. Also, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet apprehended a fishing vessel smuggling huge amounts of explosive material while transiting from Iran through using a route in the Gulf of Oman used to transfer weapons to the Houthis in November. In addition, in early December, the fleet also intercepted more than 50 tons of ammunition, rounds, and fuses for rockets in the Gulf of Oman along a maritime route from Iran to Yemen. Finally, over 2,100 assault rifles were taken by the U.S. Navy from a ship in the Gulf of Oman earlier in January, which is suspected that it originated in Iran and was headed for the Houthis.
In Adala, a soldier was killed when a police center was attacked by Houthi drones. Military sources confirmed that the drones targeted the military point located at the entrance of Salem area, west of Adala. Hundreds of the brigade's affiliates and the dead soldier family had carried the body to his hometown in Qataba district. The United Nations announced that Yemen's education system is at real risk. Such statements come when major infrastructure has been damaged by the war and more than 2 million students are out of schools. This report has more details.
The United Nations said that the education system in Yemen is on the verge of collapse due to the country's war for more than 8 years. This came in a statement by the International Immigration Organization on the occasion of the International Education Day, which falls on January 24 of each year. The organization said that 2,700 schools have been destroyed since the war began. They added that the education system in Yemen is completely destroyed and the future of these kids is so vague. The organization indicated that they support 16 schools in 6 displacement sites to improve access to education. However, the war has caused the degradation of the educational sector and the leakage of millions of students from the educational facilities and the interruption of thousands of teachers from teaching due to cut-off salaries and the displacement from their homes due to the oppression of the militia. And hundreds of educational facilities were demolished, and some of them turned into military barracks, according to human rights reports. In addition to the existence of a large student population amid a modest educational environment in which more than 100,000 students enrolled in governmental schools, at a time when Yemen lost an abundance of schools that were destroyed by the Houthi militia, according to the Education Office. Students are crowded in classrooms that do not comply with educational standards. in addition to the lack of textbooks and the scarcity of educational staff, many factors that negatively affected the students' capacity, and they also have impacted the outcomes of the educational process. Many challenges face thousands of students, where private school fees this year amounted to 300,000 riyals, and public schools are no longer able to accommodate more students.
5 army soldiers were killed and wounded in new terrorist bombing targeting a military patrol in Abyan Governorate. Military sources reported that an explosive device planted by unknown persons exploded while a military patrol was passing by. The Iranian-backed Houthi militia killed a woman and wounded 2 children. This was done by the artillery shelling on residential area in Lahj Governorate. Local sources said that the militia launched artillery shelling on the village north of the governorate. Angry demonstrations took the streets of major Middle Eastern cities against the burning of Holy Quran by an extremist person in Sweden. The incident happened under the eye of the Sweden police. Such a thing angered Muslims around the globe, as it was a direct assault against Islam and has nothing to do with freedom of expression. This report has more.
On Saturday, far-right protesters burned a Quran and yelled anti-Muslim chants in front of Turkey's embassy in Stockholm, Sweden. Ankara promptly condemned the incident, as well as Sweden's authorization of the right-wing group's protest. Turkey also postponed a planned visit by Sweden's defense chief, which would have centered on the country's NATO membership. Even after anti-Islamophobic riots in April, Sweden, which has some of the greatest free speech laws in Europe, gave permission for yet another Quran-burning demonstration. The Turkish administration, as well as the opposition and the General Party, were all experiencing a surge of fury, which the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister frantically sought to quell. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the vile attack on our Holy Quran. Permitting this anti-Islam act, which targets Muslims and insults our sacred values, under the guise of freedom of expression is completely unacceptable, Turkey's Foreign Minister said. Rasmus Paludan, the leader of the Danish far-right political group Hardline, led the Quran burning. The demonstration was legal under the country's free speech legislation, but Sweden's leaders criticized the conduct, calling it appalling. The burning of the Quran on Saturday infuriated several Muslim countries. Thousands of protesters marched through Yemen's streets as demonstrators gathered outside the Swedish consulate in Baghdad. Morocco stated it was astonished the authorities had let it take place in front of the Swedish forces of order. Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates all criticized the act, as did the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Several dozen protesters gathered in front of the Swedish embassy in Istanbul, where they burned a Swedish flag and demanded that Turkey cut diplomatic ties with Stockholm. Paludan, a Swedish-Danish activist who had already been convicted of racial abuse, incited riots in Sweden last year when he publicly burned copies of the Quran.
التهامة فيها خير كبير جدا.
البيطري صمم عمان للتغذية الحيوانية بشكل عام.
نجي نعالج البقرة على طول، الحمد لله الآن لو في بقرة مريضة نعرف إيش فيه.
يهدف المشروع إلى تحسين سبل عيش مربيات الثروة الحيوانية.
قمنا بعملية تدريب المربيات. الهدف هو كيف ننتج حليب نظيف.
طبعا هناك حماس صراحة من المزارعين وجمعية كشوبع.
نسبة الزيادة في الإنتاج قد تكون 99%.
The Houthi militia resumed its campaigns of land looting south of Hodeidah Governorate. About a year ago, the Houthi militia embarked on a massive looting campaign aimed at seizing vast lands in the city. Coming next in the news. World Health Organization seek extra funding to battle health emergency zones. Welcome back. The World Health Organization announced that they lack urgent funding to battle health emergencies in Yemen, Syria, and Ukraine. The following report has more on this.
The World Health Organization has launched a $2.54 billion fundraising appeal to help people experiencing health emergencies around the world, including conflicts in Yemen, Syria, and Ukraine. The conflict in Yemen that started in 2014 has cut off access to necessary items such as food and medicine. The ongoing war in Yemen has also resulted in the closure of many clinics due to a lack of staff, medicine, and equipment, forcing people to travel many miles to get the needed treatment. In Yemen, 19.7 million people do not have access to basic health care. Only 51% of Yemen's health facilities are fully operational, and the majority of those lack specialists, equipment, and basic medicines. These gaps have an impact on services for the most vulnerable, particularly women and children. Also, several doctors in Sana'a stated that the Houthi officials secretly work together with medicine smugglers who sell expired medication to provide clinics from storage facilities across the country. Many hospitals have been completely out of service, lack supplies, or are converted into military barracks. After 8 years of the conflict, the health system across the country has been severely weakened. Every new health emergency puts further strain on the already overworked and undercapable health facilities in Yemen. Furthermore, limited finance and the humanitarian response have a long-term impact on healthcare provision and quality. Many humanitarian efforts are being carried out without sufficient monitoring and evaluation to ensure that help reaches those in most need. For more than 80% of the population, getting access to food, clean water, and medical treatment is extremely difficult. The provision of healthcare is greatly hampered by lack of tools and supplies. Also, the Houthis are frequently accused of obstructing or delaying humanitarian aid deliveries, on which 80% of Yemen's 30 million people rely for survival. The crisis in Yemen will not be resolved by itself. The international community should work harder to find a solution for the conflict in Yemen.
The Ministry of Transport decided to restore the General Authority for Land Transport to practice its activities in the Port of Aden. The ministry also determined the powers and tasks of the Heavy Transport Syndicate in accordance with the trade union law. Commercial sources said that the cost of trucks to transport containers from Port of Aden to Mansoura ranges between 700,000 to 900,000 riyals. The MSC-3 containers ship of the Suez Shipping Line docked in the Port of Aden. The giant ship carried 2,558 equivalent containers containing goods, foodstuffs, and consumables to meet the requirements of the local market. The World Health Organization announced that they started an investigation on the connection of the contaminated cough syrup and the death of 300 children in 3 countries. The following report has more details.
The World Health Organization is investigating whether there is any connection between manufacturers whose contaminated cough syrups it has linked to the deaths of more than 300 children in 3 countries. Citing unacceptable levels of toxins in the products, the World Health Organization is seeking more information about the specific raw materials used by 6 manufacturers in India and Indonesia to produce medicines linked to the recent deaths, as well as whether the companies obtained them from some of the same suppliers. However, the World Health Organization has not named any suppliers. The organization also is considering whether to advise families globally to reassess the use of cough syrups for children in general, while questions over the safety of some of these products are unresolved. World Health Organization experts are evaluating the evidence for whether or when such products are medically necessary for children. The deaths of children from acute kidney injury began in July 2022 in Gambia. The World Health Organization has said the deaths are linked to over-the-counter cough syrups the children took for common illnesses and which contained a known toxin. The organization has identified 6 drug makers in India and Indonesia who produced the syrups for the children. These manufacturers have either declined to comment on the investigation or denied using contaminated materials that contributed to any deaths. Reuters has no evidence of wrongdoing by the companies the World Health Organization has named. WHO spokesperson Margaret Harris said, "This is of the highest priority for us to see no more child deaths from something that is so preventable." The United Nations Health Agency stated that it had widened its investigation into potential contamination in cough syrups to 4 additional countries where the same products may have been on sale. It called on other governments and the global pharmaceutical industry to launch urgent checks to root out substandard medicines and improve regulation.
The governor of Shabwa directed the oil companies operating in the province to open offices for them in the capital Atak. In addition to depositing the financial tax in the central bank, Shabwa branch, the leadership of the local authority in Shabwa agreed with the company to deposit the financial tax amounting to 1 billion reals annually to the central bank instead of depositing it in Sana'a Bank. The revenues of Zakat duties in Lahj Governorate during the past year amounted to 2,022 billion and 129 million reals. This comes as a result of applying the new work mechanism in collecting the dues of the General Authority for Zakat obligations from those charged with performing all kinds of Zakat duties in all of the directorates. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemen security seizes Houthi-bound drone ports in Al-Mahra Governorate. The United Nations says that Yemen's education system is at risk. Angry rallies in the Middle East protest against the burning of the Holy Quran in Sweden. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.